Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Woodworking with Mr. Kevin. I am your host, Mr. Kevin, and today what we're going to talk about is the mastering of jig building. I know there's probably hundreds of videos on how to build jigs on the YouTubes. You can just type it in, the ultimate jig ever, the best jig ever. This is the most ultimate jig ever. Right, but what happens when you can't find a jig that you want to make? And you're like, oh crap, now what do I do? If you don't know how to imaginate and make it happen, you're going to be stuck. So I'm going to make a little series called Mastering Jig Building by Mr. Kevin. That's me. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go over all my bazillion years of experience in building jigs. I've probably done this for over 30 years, building all sorts of weird jigs. You name it, I've built it. Go ahead, name it. Put it down below and I'll tell you if I built it or not. And you look at the, 9,000 billion YouTube videos, you're going to be like, oh God, now I'm even more confused. Because jigs can be almost anything. Just last week, this is how many jigs I used. You guys ready? All right, so last week I made these round window casings with keystones in them. And here's one of the first keystones I made. I'll put a picture of it over here, like this right here. So to get this, I had to make a jig. First I had to make a template for this, which I made out of wood. And then I had to figure out, well, how am I going to route this out, right? So what I did is I made a template like this out of just scrap plywood I had laying around. I took this and I traced this out on this face here. As you can see, it's a little bit bigger, a little bigger. And then I came in this 3/4 of an inch and then cut this out. But then I had to add something to the back because I needed to. Let me stand back here. And then I added all this garbage on the back because what has to happen is to route this out, I had to slide this in here. Slide that in there like that. Good golly. And to give me this. And what I did after that is I used a V-groove bit. Let me see if I can find it. Uh-oh, going down. It's going down. So a long time ago, I made a bunch of mirrors. These little mirrors like this. These silly things. And to route this part out, I had to make this jig with this itty bitty little router with a pattern bit in it. Easy enough. So what I did with this guy is I took a bevel. I don't know if you can see that out here. See if we can come in there. See that? It's very pointy, a little 45-degree angle bevel thing. And I took this and put it on here. Let me hold this all together and then routed all this out. That's just part of what I had to do last week. So jigs are very important for all sorts of kinds of things, especially if you're a woodworker that makes money woodworking. Depends on what you want to do. If you're just going to be a cabinet maker, then your jigs are going to be pretty much all the same, and you'll have one jig forever. We're going to get into that later. So I made these a long time ago, years ago, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And I had this left over, and I used this base with a little flush trim bevel bit thing so I can make these guys. All right, that was just one thing I had to do. And everything here is made out of scrap. And this probably took me 15 minutes to make after I drilled all the holes. Because these radiuses here, I did with an 1 3/4 bit, and I just drilled them out, and then I cut it out on the with my little jigsaw, and then I just sanded the edges. Okay. All right. So the other thing I had to do, excuse me very much. So the other thing I had to do for the same job as I'm making floor molding, I don't know if you guys can see that or not. It's got this weird little bevelly, weird shaped edge. And it's all Peruvian walnut. And we hand turned corners that look like this. So I had somebody make a bunch of these 90-degree corners, turned them all, and they have, all the leftovers have this hole in them. One thing I forgot to do is I forgot to make 45s because there's 9 walls that have 45s on them. So how am I going to take something like this, cut it down the middle to make a 45? And you can set it on the table saw and run it. You can do all sorts of things, but it's dangerous. You can try to cut it on the bandsaw just right down the middle, holding it like this, and have the bandsaw in there and try to run that down the middle. But they're not all made the same, right? So it's kind of rough in there because that was just a drill bit that went down through this thing after it was solid and turned and all that other crap. So what I did is I made a jig. I made 2 jigs. Now here's the first one. And I'll show you how it runs on the bandsaw. I got a picture of it over here somewhere. What I did is I took a bunch of scrap sticks and I cut 45-degree angle on them. That's just scrap, and then I just nailed the ends in with 1.5-inch pins. And boom. Poplar scrap right here with a stop on it. It's made out of 1/4 poplar. And these guys, you can see that right in there. So these guys are also on a 45-degree angle. Everything is flush on the back here. This side's all flush because this sits up against the fence. This guy sits in here like that. Okay, see how that works? Then I take this guy and set it on here. And I clamp it down. Now this is going to be loose in there because I didn't push against this, but if you push against it, it holds it in place, and that'll keep that from turning. See how that is? So this is a weird jig that nobody else in the world is going to make. I'm just showing you how my thought process. So I started with, how am I going to do this, right? I drew a bunch of pictures. I thought about it. I imagined myself cutting it on the bandsaw because the bandsaw is the safest. And this is what I came up with right here. Okay. All right. So now we're going to see how it works. I'm going to turn you down so we can see over here. Okay. So I'm going to loosen this back up. So I've got this piece of molding, turned curved molding there. Push this kind of in there so now it won't fall out. All this is flush on this side, and I'm going to try to keep my hands away from everything. And here we go. No dust collector because it makes noise, and yeah. And I'm just going to go in and cut that on the angle. Stop it there, and I'm going to pull it out. There we go. It's got a little mark there, but I think I'm going to disc that off. Sugar. All right, there he is. 45 degrees. All right. So yeah, it's working. It's working really good. Well, there you go. A silly little jig like this that holds a curve thing, so you can cut it from 90 to 45 degrees. This is just one of the things you have to do as a woodworker sometimes to make custom jigs. You can see I didn't spend a lot of time making this one. There are some I have that I spent like a day and a half making them. They're mainly for jewelry boxes and things like that I'm going to use over and over again for the next 20 years. Stuff like this, I don't spend a lot of time doing it. I make it all out of scrap and make it as fast as possible. Destaco clamps are very handy to have. You can look them up on the Googles or whatever. But yeah, they're very handy, especially for things like this. Also for doing shaping. If you're making let's say you're making a handle and you want to shape the same handle 4,000 times, clamp it into place and off you go. So just remember, building jigs, the main thing is you got to think of what tool you're going to use them for. You know, what's their purpose? How much time you want to spend building them? Are you going to use it once, twice, or 1,000 times? And if you're going to use it 1,000 times, make sure you make it precise and spend some time doing it. If you're going to use it like I did here 10 or 12 times, whatever it is, just pin it together and off you go. The hardest part about making jigs is for people that are just starting is how to do it. Well, the how is, you know, if you have a little bit of woodworking skill, how is not a big deal. Why is because if you can't use these two hands safely, you need to make a jig, basically. And if you want to repeat things over and over and over and over again, thousands of times, you need to make a jig. You can't freehand something on the bandsaw or the table saw or a chop saw without, you know, making sure it's exactly the same every single time. And for something like this, you saw how it works. It works pretty good. Didn't take much time, took a little bit of thought, you know, spent a half hour thinking about it. Make sure once you got the thought in your head, hey, this is what I'm going to do, that you actually practice it in your mind, sit in front of the tool and look at it and go, okay, if I do this, how's that going to work? If I do this, is it going to kick back at me? Is it going to cut my fingers off? Is it going to shoot stuff at me? Are my hands in the way? There's a million things to think about. I'll make a list someday and I'll put them up on the interwebs. Mr. Kevin's list of not to do things. So I turned all of these guys into 45s from a 90 using this jig here. And then I used this jig to put on my disc sander to sand them all smooth so it wouldn't be rough. So when I stuck them together with the floor molding, we would come up with something that was like that. However that looks. I don't have my glasses on, but yeah, you get the idea, right? The Art of Jig Building with Mr. Kevin. That's what we're going to go over. And it could be anything. You know, I make these trays sometimes for jewelry boxes. I made this little guy on the edge sander so I could sand all the parts smooth, because if you try to sand that by hand with your finger or whatever, or a sander, edge sander, drum sand, whatever, it won't come out nice. You need to sand it by hand. So I made this little jig. The other day when I was disc sanding these things also, I needed to get super close to the disc sander, super close. So I made this guy out of just leftover scrap, and I needed it up higher to get more of the disc. And I only have a little 10-inch disc sander, so I raised it up this high, which got over the little center part that's hollow, so I could actually disc something that was like this wide. So I actually put this in place and ground this down till it was right on the disc for safety. Okay, so here's another jig I have that I use on my disc sander quite a bit. It's a 45 degree, and the sides are 90 degrees to the disc itself. I have a little key on the back, so it'll go in the miter slot there. This also, I've had this for probably 15 years. It's completely accurate as it can be, 45s, 290s. And I'll show you all this stuff in upcoming videos. We have this little guy for sanding veneers that we put through the drum sander. Very simple, easy little tiny thing to do. If the veneer is like a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch, put that on there, put the piece of wood in here, and then you just run it through the drum sander to the thickness you want. Easy enough. Okay, and some things are super complicated. Like if you've seen the curved cabinets of Bembo, I made these guys for shaping all the raised panel molding. So all the curved raised panel molding was made using these guys right here. This is the inside, the outside, or however it goes. But yeah, so they can get complicated. The things you need to know about jigs is, I like to say the why, the what, and the how. Is that what I like to say? I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Because sometimes you want to make stuff like this. I don't know if you can see that. These are little feathers, keys, feathers. And there's a jig for that, which I'll show you on the table saw when we're doing the table saw. And I also have a jig for cutting those little feathers, which are these little guys right here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but and this is what that looks like. And this is for the bandsaw. It's got the key for the miter slot. And you just take it on there and you put your piece of wood in here. Okay, so we put these guys on here like this. Boom. And we run it through the bandsaw. And we cut this side. This side's the bandsaw side. And it cuts a 45-degree angle. And we flip it over and push it to the end of this guy right here and cut it again. Once we get done with that, here's a purple one. I get these little fellas right here. It's a purple heart. Here, you can really see this one. Boom. See, it's purple heart and maple. See that? That's pretty cool, right? I sand this right here with this guy right here. See how that works? The butts in there, you can sand like 6 or 8 of them at a time. Run them through the drum sander, the thickness, you flip them over, try to get this center line as even as possible. Yeah, there you go. Jigs and the art of making jigs. There's a ton of things you can do. Tons. Every day I make a new jig. Every week I probably make, all right, not every day. All right, let's get serious. About once a week, I'm making jigs. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go on every single tool I have in my shop that I use jigs for, and I'll show you all the jigs I use the most. As somebody who is a contractor who does this for a living, I don't really make YouTube for a living. I'm a contractor in California, and I make a living woodworking. If you've seen my videos, you know all the crazy stuff I build. And if you haven't, go check it out. Tell all your friends, share it with the world. Okay, so instead of watching videos that say the best jig ever for whatever it is, I'm going to try to teach you guys how to build your own jigs. For those just starting out, we're just going to take easy, simple little jigs, the ones I use the most. And I build everything from cabinets, custom windows, curved stuff, built coffins and kitchens and staircases and exterior windows and doors, curved everything, whatever. There's a video over there that has all my crap on it. I'll update it. Mr. Kevin's, we did this, already done that stuff. At the end of the day, it's all about learning, right? We're all here to learn. If you don't like puzzles, woodworking might not be for you. I love puzzles. I love figuring things out, and I love making jigs. So I'm going to hopefully share some of my knowledge with you, and hopefully all of you guys out there will go, oh, That's what you do. I don't need to make something crazy and elaborate that takes 20 hours to build and put finish on it and put my name on it and speed, racing stripes and all that stuff. You just do this, and that's how it works. And I'm going to show you the easy way to make all the jigs that I use. And I got a whole shed full of jigs. So, oh boy, here we go. All right, people. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, fling, flang, the bang, bang. Be careful because they're running out of toilet paper again. You have a Merry New Year's, happy whatever the hell it is, happy everything. You be safe out there, and you have an awesome day. Go outside and play. Hug somebody you love. Be safe out there, and I'll see you next time on Woodworking with Mr. Kevin. That's me. Happy New Year, everybody. Bye.
Subscribe now.
This is Tito, the farting Chihuahua. He's part pit bull, and he's losing all his hair because the Chihuahuas aren't made to go outside and run around and chase bears like we did this weekend. He's very ferocious, and he smells like farts, but he's a cute fella. I got water sticking out my nose. Hold on very much. The mirror is kind of like screwed up. Hey, look at there I am. I'm in a black hole. Yeah, 45, yeah. God, with 22 and a half would be even smaller. Is that what I said before? Well, that was wrong. Why are you biting my foot for? You bite my foot and a damn dog. That didn't make any sense. I'm getting all flicky flackered. So I watched somebody the other day make a video on a taper leg jig. And this thing was elaborate and it was beautiful. The thing was cool, man. It had all these different little round things. You can turn the little handle on the top, lock it down, and blah, 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 blah. The first one I made was probably 30 years ago, and here it is. Yeah. The art of mastering jig building. The how, the what, and the whys. Yeah. We're going to go over all this coming up. All right, everybody. Well, Happy New Year to you all. Fling, flang, the bang, bang.